Thank you for starting your week with us. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee in Seoul. Let's get started with a look at today's highlights. Following Pyongyang's sixth and most powerful nuclear test on Sunday, Seoul's finance minister promises to keep a close eye on possible negative ripple effects on the financial markets. While there are concerns that the U.S. may withdraw from the Chorus FTA, the Korean government says it's been preparing for such a scenario ever since the deal was first signed. These stories and more coming right up. Seoul's finance minister has vowed to intervene in the financial markets if necessary amid concerns of volatility in the wake of North Korea's latest nuclear test. Our Kim Hae-sung starts us off.
South Korea's finance minister vowed on Monday to take measures to support financial markets if instability caused by North Korea's latest nuclear test shows signs of spreading to the real economy.
There could be negative ripple effects should geopolitical risk resurface following the international community's response and any other additional provocations by North Korea.
The urgently scheduled meeting presided over by Finance Minister Kim Dong-yeon was attended by senior officials including Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol and Finance Services Commission Chairman Choi Jong-gu, who discussed ways to deal with the potential impact of the North Korean provocation.
We will hold meetings with related ministries every day to monitor domestic and global financial markets, exports, raw materials, foreign investors' movements, and so on.
On top of around-the-clock monitoring, the minister also vowed to take swift and stern policy measures to stabilize the markets according to the Finance Ministry's contingency plan. Kim Hae-sung, Business Daily.
And moving on to our coverage of the markets, we have our markets contributor Lee Ji-hye joining us on the line. Hello, Ji-hye.
Hi, Ji-yoon.
All right, so how did Korean equities perform on the first trading day of the week?
Well, with North Korea testing a hydrogen bomb on Sunday, Korean stocks tumbled across the board. The benchmark Kospi plunged 1.19% to close at 2,329.65, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq also dropped 1.68% to close at 650.89. U.S. President Donald Trump said Washington would cut all ties with countries that are doing business with North Korea. Many are seeking haven assets, such as the Japanese yen, with the currency soaring on this first day of trade, along with the Swiss franc as well as gold. Market bellwether Samsung Electronics shed 0.95%. SK Hynix fell 0.87%. Hyundai Motors dropped 2.1%, and POSCO also fell 0.58%. By sectors, looking up were retail, oil and gas, non-ferrous metals, as well as game and computer softwares. On the downward slope, publication, furniture, and airlines were also looking grim for today's trade.
Then can you give us a rundown on the major market events lined up for this week?
Sure, Ji-yoon. It is Labor Day in the United States on Monday, but the 9th BRICS Summit, where leaders from Brazil, Russia, India, and China meet, it kicks off today in the Chinese city of Xiamen. On Tuesday, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is also scheduled to hold bilateral talks with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. Over in the U.S., Minneapolis Federal Reserve Bank President Neil Kashkari will speak at a moderated Q&A session at the first Tuesday speaker series at Carlson School of Management in Minneapolis. On Wednesday, the data for international trade in July, as well as flash PMI readings for August, will be released in the U.S.
With tensions rising once again on the Korean peninsula, the focus is now turning towards developments here at home as well.
Sure. Well, to start us off on Tuesday, the Bank of Korea will be releasing the August data for foreign exchange reserve as well as the balance of international payments for the month of July. In the wake of retaliation from China in opposition to the U.S. missile shield THAAD, many will be looking to gauge the impact it has had on the local tourism industry as well as the service sector. On Wednesday, the Korea Development Institute will be releasing its report on economic trends for the month of September. This comes after the think tank said in its previous report that the foundation for the local economy is seen as weak due to shrinking production. There may be mixed messages from the numbers released by Statistics Korea for July's industrial sectoral trends, showing a 1.2% rise, with some expecting more optimism from this report in comparison to the previous one. Wrapping up this week on Thursday and Friday, the Ministry of Strategy and Finance will be holding a conference dubbed Prospects and Challenges for Sustained Growth in Asia. This event will be co-hosted by the Washington-based think tank, the Peterson Institute for International Economics, the International Monetary Fund, as well as the Bank of Korea. Speakers include Christine Lagarde and Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol, who could provide clues on how central banks plan on tackling the ongoing situation on the Korean Peninsula. Then Lee Ji-hye for Business Daily.
And as just mentioned in our stocks report, leaders from the BRICS bloc of nations are gathered in southeastern China for their annual summit. The three-day meeting launched on Sunday, where Chinese President Xi Jinping called for the promotion of an open economy and trade liberalization. Addressing an audience of business and political leaders, he said a rebalancing of the global economy can be achieved through a new jointly created global value chain, in stark contrast to the Trump administration's America First policy. Xi wrapped up his speech by saying Beijing is encouraging Chinese businesses to go abroad, just as it warmly welcomes overseas investment in its domestic economy. U.S. President Donald Trump has hinted at withdrawing from the Chorus FTA as early as this week. The Korean government says it has long anticipated and prepared for such a scenario since the trade deal was first drawn up. Our Lee Jung-hyun has the story.
U.S. President Donald Trump made another visit to the hurricane-stricken city of Houston, Texas on Saturday, and at a meeting with the press, he said that discussing the future of the U.S.-South Korea free trade agreement with his advisors was very much on his mind. This comes after a report by the Washington Post on Saturday claiming Trump had ordered his advisors to draw up plans to withdraw from the free trade deal. The report added that although the U.S. might decide to stay in the agreement and renegotiate its terms, they're far along in their internal preparations for terminating the deal, with the formal withdrawal process possibly starting as early as this week. To this, the South Korean government said it would respond calmly and that it has been preparing for such a scenario ever since the Chorus FTA was first signed. Pundits say such statements from the U.S. leader could just be a strategic way of gaining the upper hand in the FTA renegotiating process, especially considering there was no mention of scrapping the agreement at the special session held by the U.S.-Korea FTA Joint Committee last month.
We have found the two sides have different views on the free trade agreement and have not reached any agreement. So I do not think it's the right time to discuss withdrawing from the FTA.
If Washington is to officially withdraw from the FTA, they would need to send a statement of withdrawal from the trade agreement. Although the Trump administration are yet to make any such concrete moves to withdraw, while internal discussions within the administration are ongoing, the South Korean government also remains on alert. Lee Jung-hyun, Business Daily.
Meanwhile, tensions between NAFTA partners rose on Sunday amid ongoing discussions over the trade deal. The disagreements revolved around the pay gap between Mexican workers and their U.S. and Canadian counterparts. Canada's largest private sector union is in favor of scrapping NAFTA if Mexico fails to implement better labor standards. Mexican business leaders, on the other hand, say labor rights should be left alone to be determined by each individual country. Recent studies show that due to the country's high inflation rate, Mexico's real wages have fallen since the agreement took place in 1994. Auto workers in Mexico are estimated to earn only 1/5 of the wages enjoyed by their American counterparts. Now, more and more Chinese parents are moving to cities from their rural homes in search of jobs that often pay 4 times higher than what they would earn in their hometowns. However, the children that they leave behind are suffering from educational deficiencies compared to their urban peers. Our Elliot Kim has more.
Every year, millions of Chinese parents leave their villages for big cities in search of bigger paychecks. But who's losing out in this exchange? The kids left behind. These kids are often left to be cared for by older grandparents, who often have deficient cognitive and social skills due to their advancing age. As a result, these children are struggling to develop reading, speech, and other skills, leading to a path where they often drop out of school.
I am always at home to babysit her and cook her meals. I do this every day. How can I teach her to sing? I don't know how to sing too because I didn't go to school and I can't read.
In the past, being a high school dropout wasn't an issue. The previous generation spent their years working at farms and factories that didn't require these skills. But with the rise of commercial farming, along with factory jobs either being outsourced or automated, China's transition to a high-value economy will require a labor force of much higher skill. Scott Rosell, co-director of the Rural Education Action Program known as REAP, says school dropouts are one of the biggest underlying social problems that have gone relatively unnoticed in China.
We know by the time these kids are 20 years old, there's going to be no assembly factories in China, right? They're all leaving, right? Wages are just too high. These kids aren't going to farm, right?
China's National Health and Family Planning Commission is working with organizations like REAP to tackle the issue of rural children being left behind. They're providing early childhood development opportunities by opening early education centers in rural China, where 44% of the population lives. For significant change to occur, REAP estimates some 300,000 of these centers will be needed, an investment that would not come cheap for the country at around $3 billion. But with the alternative being a massive skill mismatch between the workforce and the jobs available, the Chinese government may not have much choice in the matter. Elliot Kim, Business Daily.
The number of irregular workers in Korea's public institutions rose in the second quarter, despite the new administration's push to create more stable jobs. According to government portal Alio and the Finance Ministry, nearly 40,000 non-regular workers were employed at the 355 institutions surveyed. Now, that figure is up by more than 1,700 workers compared to the first quarter. The rise is being attributed to temporary positions created for short-term contract work in support of the government's welfare policies. The Korea Copyright Protection Agency reported the largest increase in irregular workers of nearly 300 as it offers short-term jobs for the handicapped, college graduates, and women who have been out of the workforce. Financial authorities are taking action to protect investors buying into virtual currencies, which is experiencing explosive growth, particularly here in Korea. And our Eunice Kim has the story on what's being considered to prevent scams in the digital currency trade.
Police raid an office space in Seoul. This company that claims to have created a new cryptocurrency raked in millions of dollars as investors swarmed to it on the promise of maximum returns of 100-fold.
This coin, developed with the world's best security technology, has taken a leading share on the global virtual money markets.
The losses don't stop there. In April, one local crypto exchange was hacked, losing deposits worth nearly $4.9 million. At a different exchange, personal data of tens of thousands of investors was compromised. Scam artists and hackers are taking advantage of the sudden spike in the popularity of virtual currencies as the value of the Bitcoin surges from just under $600 a year ago to nearly $4,800 this month, multiplying 8 times. The Korean government does not recognize digital money as legitimate currency, nor as financial products. Nonetheless, a task force of relevant government agencies held a meeting on Thursday to discuss measures to protect retail investors from losing their hard-earned cash amid their runaway popularity.
At this point, virtual currency transactions are not financial transactions, but we need to proactively respond to them so they do not negatively impact our overall transaction environment.
Some measures on the table include strengthening identification requirements akin to that of banks and creating a system where users make deposits or withdrawals through their bank accounts. Also, the reporting of any suspicious transactions could be made mandatory as a supervisory framework is strengthened, including a reference for penalties. A guideline is expected to be completed and announced by the year's end. How cryptocurrencies will be regulated as a business or as an asset is up for further discussion. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
Contamination fears over sanitary pads being sold here in Korea have become a public concern in recent months. Now, on top of that, their prices, notably higher compared to other countries, is also fueling further controversy. Here's our Lee Joo-young with more.
Last year in May, a story went viral about a girl who missed school for a week because she could not afford to buy sanitary pads. Shortly afterwards, similar stories shocked the nation with girls in low-income households using shoe insoles or towels as makeshift sanitary pads. Acknowledging that they are daily necessities, the government had removed the value-added tax on these items back in 2004. But compared to other countries, disposable pads in Korea are still some of the most expensive in the world. According to a research conducted by the Office of a National Assembly lawmaker, the average price of one sanitary pad in Korea was about 331 won, or roughly 29 cents. That's significantly higher compared to other countries like the US, Japan, and France. Prices were also growing at a relatively faster clip than other goods. While Korea saw an average 13.2% increase in the overall inflation rate over the past 7 years, that of sanitary pads grew at double the pace, seen at 26.3%. This has sparked outrage as the price of key raw materials like pulp and non-woven fabric have actually fallen over the cited period.
Firms claim they're using high-quality pulp and non-woven fabric, but I think it's nothing but an excuse.
The issue with safety has also triggered public consternation. While the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety checks for 9 types of chemicals, the potentially harmful substance at the center of the controversy has not been tested for. Activists demand the government tighten its regulations by testing for more types of chemicals that could be hazardous to human health before they are approved for sale. Lee Joo-young, Business Daily.
Lotte Duty Free is considering withdrawing from Incheon International Airport amid the diplomatic row between Seoul and Beijing over the U.S. THAAD missile defense system. The nation's top duty-free operator said in the face of declining revenues, it would be unable to afford the high rent for the remainder of its contract period. Lotte Duty Free won a 5-year deal with the airport back in 2015, with total rent reaching more than $3.5 billion, substantially more than what other operators like Shilla and Shinsegae are paying. With other duty-free operators also demanding the airport to lower the cost of rent, Lotte's pullout is feared to spark a domino effect. Hanwha Galleria has already decided to close its duty-free shop at Jeju International Airport. Korea's tourism industry has been battered since China imposed a travel restriction as part of its retaliation over Seoul's deployment of a THAAD missile defense battery. However, Korea has always had a knack for surviving difficult challenges, and the tourism industry is now looking at other countries to fill the void left by Chinese tourists. Our Lee Ji-won reports.
Last year, Chinese tourists accounted for nearly 50% of the 17 million tourists that visited Korea. But with Beijing's ban on tours to Seoul, the local tourism industry has been hard hit, seeing a 70% on-year fall in Chinese tourists last month, leading to a 40% drop in the number of foreign tourists overall. And with heightened tensions on the Korean peninsula aggravating the situation, Seoul is expected to face its worst ever tourism deficit of $15 billion this year. But Korea has been coming up with various measures to cope with the situation. The government and related ministries work to increase flights and cruises in and out of the country and even eased visa regulations. $3.4 million has also been allocated to boost transport and shopping, including promoting a transport card with extra benefits and discounts for tourists and providing free Wi-Fi at 600 major attractions around the country. But one of the long-term goals of Korea's tourism industry is to reduce dependency on Chinese tourists.
We are focusing our promotional activities on Southern and Central Asia, places like Taiwan and Hong Kong, doing things like making guidebooks and marketing through social media. We have also opened offices in Kazakhstan and Mongolia, which led to a 20-30% increase in tourists to Korea.
The organization also launched Halal Restaurant Week on Friday. With the number of Muslim tourists visiting the country nearing 1 million a year, the event promotes Muslim-friendly restaurants around the country and gives out discounts to tourists. Seoul City has also been working to welcome tourists from Southeast Asia. The city has put up some 50 new information boards and maps with Thai, Vietnamese, and Malay added in tourist hotspots. The boards previously just had information in Korean, English, Chinese, and Japanese. One of the boards can be found at Bukchon Hanok Village, home to hundreds of Korea's traditional houses and one of Seoul's major tourist attractions.
We found this information board really helpful because it tells us what this place is, the significance of this tour spot, and where to look. I also felt very welcome to see boards in our own language.
Regional governments and organizations have also worked to promote local attractions. Gyeonggi-do Province and Gyeonggi Tourism Organization have been inviting bloggers from Southeast Asian countries this year to show around the province that surrounds Korea's capital. Bloggers from the Philippines, Taiwan, and Vietnam have participated in the program, and for the month of August, Thai bloggers were invited. During their 5-day trip, the participants visited tourist attractions and did hands-on activities like making their own coffee at one of Korea's top coffee manufacturing firms.
Korean brand coffees are very popular in Thailand, and to be able to have a tour of how it's produced and even try it out myself, I think is a very special experience that I'd like to recommend to others.
The participants also got to enjoy the view of Suwon City from 130 meters above the ground in a helium balloon.
I'm actually very scared, but I'm trying to have fun.
We've been looking at the posts that they uploaded during their stay here, and they've already had loads of likes and shares. We're hoping this brings in more tourists from those bloggers' countries.
While tour experts say these efforts to diversify the market are needed, many say more needs to be done, such as making sure visitors enjoy their stay, feel welcome, and want to revisit the country.
It's important to create mutual understanding between the local community and tourists from different cultures. Tours and tourists are no longer occasional events, but something that will have to be dealt with in our everyday lives. And their peaceful coexistence needs more thought and effort over the long term.
Lee Ji-won, Business Daily.
The Korean government is taking steps to help the country's self-driving automobile industry run in full gear. Looking to beat the competition in what is expected to be a highly lucrative market, the government is building a multi-billion-dollar facility where researchers can test autonomous vehicles in real-world conditions. Our Kim Mo-gyun has more.
When a car suddenly comes to a halt, a self-driving car also brakes on its own. When driving around curves, the autonomous car accelerates, maintaining a safe distance from the car ahead. It can also change lanes after checking its surroundings for other vehicles. Self-driving is one of the major technologies of the fourth industrial revolution, which is why tech giants like Google have been developing autonomous cars since 2009. In fact, the estimated global proportion of self-driving cars is expected to jump from 0.01% in 2020 to over 75% in 2035. This is why the Korean government has decided to build a test facility the size of 40 soccer fields in Hwasong, Gyeonggi-do Province to actively support the nation's development of self-driving technology.
To be a leader in the fiercely competitive market, we will have to apply our technology in real-world settings.
The $10 billion facility, dubbed K-City, will cover 320,000 square meters, and it will have simulated roads to replicate highways, downtown areas, and communal environments. It will also provide 35 different driving conditions such as toll gates, tunnels, and potholes to improve the safety of self-driving cars. The facility is scheduled to be completed by the end of next year, and the Transport Ministry plans to open the testing site to private companies and academic institutions to test their products. 김목յան, Business Daily.
And that wraps it up for today. But we'll be back tomorrow with more of the day's top business stories, so don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.